Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. But now we are rejoined by brother of the podcast, the new host of his own Commander show, Snacking with Selby, Mr. Zach Selby. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing quite well, actually. I got to work from home today because, unfortunately, my car is in the shop, needed a new muffler. But I got to chill at home while I wrote some stories. So that was nice.
Yeah, that's always good when the mechanic keeps telling you, no, I need a couple more hours. Like, yeah, sure. Keep doing that. But that being said, you got obviously the Snacking with Selby. I saw a little snippet that you had posted with Tress Way. Kind of tell us about it. I know that obviously everyone that is a fan of this show knows how much you love to bake, and you upload those pictures, and we absolutely love it because you're really good at it.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the origin of it. Is my coworkers benefit greatly from the fact that I bake things, and I'm not afraid to tell them that they benefit very greatly from it. And we thought, what's the best way we can take advantage of this besides just eating it for ourselves? And I was like, you know what? How do I make some stuff for the players? Let's figure out what their favorite dessert is, figure out why it's their favorite desserts, and then just talk. Just have a conversation while we're eating, this really delicious treats that I made the night before. And it's sponsored by Safeway, so that's really cool. And we have 8 shows. The first, I wouldn't want to say the first. I don't know how the whole situation is going to rack up, but One of them is Tress Way, and we had coconut cream pie, which was very, very good. And the rest of them, I guess you'll just have to wait until they get released to see what they have in store.
So I hope you interview Sam Howell on there and get him to eat steak.
Yeah. Do you get discounts at Safeway now?
I should. They didn't give me these sweet aprons, though, which is really nice.
Okay, well, there you go. As long as they hook you up with some desserts, that bakery section is.
It is. I pass by it on purpose like every day because the smells are just, delectable.
Definitely. And, well, can't wait to definitely catch those episodes. It's going to be a good time. And speaking of a good time, Washington plays on Saturday, the final preseason game.
7 o'clock.
And, 7 o'clock. And Coach Ron Rivera said that, I believe the quote was, the starters will be very limited in the game. So how many snaps or how many series do you think that very limited means?
Well, first of all, he didn't just say very limited. He said very limited, very limited, very limited. And again, one more, very limited. A lot of varies there. And I would not be surprised if they just didn't play at all. To that being said.
Thank goodness.
Because honestly, what else do you need them to do? I mean, there might be some starters out there that play. I don't want to say that Rivera's lying to us. I don't think he is. But I would be surprised if literally all 22 of the starters were out there playing. And even if the players, those starters do get out there, I would say a series, maybe. I just don't think there's going to be a whole lot of action for the starters. It's honestly there's more questions about who's going to win those backup roles than who's going to be, a starter at X position. I think some of those reserve spots are a lot more up for grabs, and I think they're a lot more compelling. So let's give them as many opportunities as we can to see if they can earn it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And after last season, of course, Washington fans were kind of feel a little bit scorned by what happened with Curtis Samuel. Trey Turner has had a very interesting offseason, of course, expected to be the starting right guard, and he hasn't been there. Washington fans, of course, are justifiably concerned after last season with Curtis Samuel. What's kind of going on with him? Is he working his way back into the lineup?
Yeah, so he's not been out there yet, but I do, at least in the lineup. But I will tell you, whenever he first signed, I was really excited. It's kind of a move that I thought in the back of my mind that might happen because he's 5-time Pro Bowler, has a history with John Masco. I actually talked to him before, he was still with the Panthers back in 2020 when Rivera first got here, and he just had glowing things to say about John Masco, which we all do, honestly. And I think it was a natural connection. Sure enough, it got done. But I think the thing you have to realize is I think they're more focused on him getting healthy as opposed to getting him out there like for training camp, because he already knows all this
Right.
stuff that John Matson is teaching him. Like he knows it like the back of his hand. There's no reason for him to go out there and try to do all this crazy stuff when he knows everything. I think the focus for him to get healthy, and he's finally getting to that point now. He's been in individual drills, and he looked pretty good doing it. But now we're in the infamous ramp up period that a lot of the other Washington players have gone through recently. Going Curtis Samuel, and I think Wes Schweitzer, did a little bit of it. Jordan Norwell did a little bit of it. I would be surprised if we don't see him, if we see him any time between now and like the first week of week 1 practices. But it is good to see him out there, because once he's in the lineup, he's obviously a very accomplished player and a very well regarded guard in the NFL. So I think whenever he does get out there, it's going to be really exciting to see all this starting five finally come together.
Yeah, and then Selby, two big news that happened this week. Phidarian Mathis got nicked up at camp, and then Chase Young was placed on the PUP list, so he won't be able to return until the Tennessee Titans game. So kind of give us an update if you have one of Phidarian Mathis. Are you kind of concerned about it? And then with Chase Young, you think it's going to be a edge rusher by committee with Chase until Chase Young's healthy?
Well, I'll start with the easy one, and until Chase has come back, which even then we don't really know exactly when that's going to be. We hope it's during the Tennessee Titans, but again, there's no clear timetable on that.
Right.
It's definitely going to be by committee. I think Tuhill has done a lot of really good stuff. I think he's really disruptive off the edge. Has had a really good tackle for loss 2 weeks ago. I think James Williams has really come on in his in this season with the team. He's really grasped the systems. He's a really disruptive pass rusher. He's had a couple of really good flash plays. And I think I would say if there's anybody who's going to be the quote unquote starter at that other end spot, it would probably be him. But I think, F.A. Obata can also come in there and play on the end as well. He's got, a very, I wouldn't say he's put up a lot of great numbers, but he's put up a lot of solid numbers over the course of his career.
Shaq put up a couple great
hell of a
plays
pass rush last week. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that goes into what I was going to bring him next, and I think both William Bradley. Yeah, you're trying to cut me off up here, man. What's going on? I'm trying to get into this soliloquy, and you're just.
I'm excited.
You just trying to make a point for me, but no, I think Bradley King, Shaka Toney, they could be. I think they're very much in the competition for that situational role as maybe the fifth defensive end there. And I think both of them have some really good strong points. Logan Paulson in these 3 key stories that he and I wrote put it really well when he said that William Bradley King has a lot of really consistent stuff, but Shaka Toney has a good ceiling that could be better than Bradley King. Although I agree with him, and when he said that I would probably put Bradley King just above him, just because what you're going to get out of him.
Yeah.
Right. And on the flip side of that, Chase going to the PUP. A guy that got activated this week was Logan Thomas. He came back. He's doing some 7-on-7 drills. First off, how did he look out there as he's come working his way back from the ACL injury? And secondly, if you had to put a percentage on if you think he's going to be out there week 1, what would it be?
Percentage-wise, I mean, it's kind of hard to say right now. I'm still going to put it at 50-50. That's a little bit of a cop-out, but we really – it comes down to how he feels on the knee. And, we really don't want him out there until he's absolutely ready, because he can be an absolute weapon for this team. In terms of how he looked out there, I think he looked relatively unbothered by, by his knee. He looked really quick in his cuts. And it was really cool, seeing all the defensive players and all the team really, give him an applause after he was coming out there for 7-on-7s. You don't really see that kind of, rare applause for a player like that, but whenever you have someone who's making that great step in a recovery, it obviously is not anywhere near that level, but whenever Alex Smith first stepped on the practice field to do 7-on-7 or get the live pass rush, that was a pretty special moment. I think this was a cool moment as well, because how hard Logan has worked. That he's kind of gone through the monotony of all the rehabs over and over and over again, but he looks just about as quick as he did before. I think he wasn't targeting that 7-on-7, but he had that same ability. I think one thing you got to watch is the knee brace is always a little bit cumbersome to work with at first, but he doesn't look bothered by it at all. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has. It's a milestone for him to be out there in 7-on-7s. The next step is for contact, which hopefully will come, in the next couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah. And so tomorrow night, one of the plays I'm most excited to see is Sam Howell. Sam Howell, he's been very exciting as we could say so far this preseason. What are some things that you need to see from Sam Howell kind of going forward tomorrow night?
I need to see him do a lot of like, the easier decisions, right? The layup things. Cause you look at like that interception he had, that was pretty much straight to the defender on that play. And I think, we see the arm strength he has. He can definitely air it out there and he can ad-lib a lot. But I would also like to see him, recognize plays a little bit quicker. So, that one play he had against the Panthers where he hit Alex Erickson down in the middle of the field and that turned into like a pretty decent game there. He was open like a few seconds before Sam Howell scrambled out of the pocket and had to kind of ad-lib and get out and scramble. If he can see that quicker, that's just gonna help things a lot more like in terms of operation for the offense.
Right.
Absolutely. And then
asking questions about the third string quarterback.
That's, right. And then
that's how it's the third preseason game.
I know.
And speaking of tomorrow night, Coach Rivera has said numerous times over this week in his pressers that there's still some competition. You alluded to it earlier, some competition going on in certain spots. Which spots do you think that those are? Is it like secondary? Is it maybe punt return, kick return? What do you think? And then who do you think is going to be getting those spots?
Well, I think the tight end spot is going to be interesting because obviously we don't know when Logan's going to come back. We have Cole Turner and Don Bates out. I'm pretty sure they're going to be ready for week 1, but at the same time, you don't really ever know, especially with like a hamstring and a calf injury. So I think, it's going to come down to between Armani Rogers and Curtis Hodges to me. I think Curtis Hodges has some really nice ability as a run blocker. There's one play he has where he kind of just laid a block on a defensive back during practice, and a lot of Carson Wentz to kind of sneak in on a red zone play for a touchdown. Just always sticks in my mind of like how really good that was. And plus, like Hodges has the ability. He's tall. He has a lot of the same like skill sets that Logan Thomas does. Armani Rogers though has made a really big push in the past couple of weeks. Not that he wasn't like doing well before that, because he's made some really like impressive plays all throughout camp. But it seems like this past week, whenever you have Hodges out, with his injury, he has really been the only guy. And he's stepped up, and Wentz has found him a lot. It seems like him and Wentz are really clicking on a lot of levels. I think that's exciting to see. I think I'm slowly starting to warm up to Rodgers, but I think, if Hodges plays, I think it's going to be a very interesting battle. In terms of secondary, I think, you're going to have to look at who's going to be that other corner there outside of those three of, Jackson, Fuller, and St. Juste. I think, Danny Johnson's been pretty solid all camp, but we'll see if he can kind of secure that spot. Safety, I didn't know this, but Jeremy Reeves has never made an initial 53-man roster for the Commanders. Yeah, which going back all the way back to 2018. Wow. If you think about how impressive he was, in 2020 as that change of pace guy, like in the back end. He's a pretty solid guy. I think it was Bob McCain said he's one of the smartest guys out there. So if he ends up making the roster, it's going to be a really special moment for him. But yeah, I think there's still some spots out there that are really going to be interesting. Those back end spots, and again, it's going to be kind of the same situation as last year when there was going to be some tough decisions at wide receiver. It's going to be a lot more tough decisions at a lot of places. We might have to let some fan favorites go. But again, that's the indication of a good roster. Right. When you have some very difficult, talented players out there who might not, just for lack of a better opportunity, just not be here, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And another battle, speaking of battles, that's been a pretty good one throughout the camp, has been that running back position. Obviously, Antonio Gibson, looks like Brian Robinson might be taking over that spot. So my question is, do you think Brian Robinson goes into week 1 as the RB1? And the second part of that question is, if AG is kind of that change of pace, second running back, how do you see his season playing out as far as his role on the team?
Well, first of all, let me just say, and I'll say it again, because Brian Robinson has been my favorite draft pick of the draft class.
You did say that.
He continues to impress me. Every time he touches the ball, he stands out spectacularly. He hits the hole forward. He hits it with purpose. And I think he's doing a lot of really good stuff that I did not expect to see out of him. Even though I liked him, I did not expect to see some of the growth out of him that I've seen in the past 2 weeks. With that being said, I don't feel like there's one set quote unquote starter in that backfield. It's kind of the same way it was with when you had just JD and Antonio Gibson back there, last year. is, can you really say that JD is like a backup? Because he's one of the best pass catching like running backs in the league. Like, and that's not just opinion, like it's the flat out fact. So I feel kind of weird saying, yeah, exactly. Like, and I feel weird saying that he's a backup or reserve to any player, honestly.
He's got his
and
own
I think
role.
the same. Yeah, exactly. Like, and I feel like that's the thing with all these running backs. They're the best of their own specific role. So maybe at the end of the day, like, Robinson could get more of the touches, and if you consider that, the starter, God bless you. But I think that it comes down to who's going to have the hot hand. And maybe Robinson's going to have more of the tough yards on one game, but the next one maybe Detroit gets attacked more on the outside, so AG is going to have more touches.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. I think that's a good way to look at it. It's not really anybody's a starter, anybody beat anybody out. It's just guys doing what they do best, and they're going to be put in the right situations in the right positions. So this will be the last time you're asked about this, I promise, because we're drawing to an end. But the linebacker position has been very concerning to fans. Of course, we just got hit with some injuries. Do you think there's a chance that they bring anybody in, or do you think this is pretty much how linebackers going to look going forward?
No, next question. No, I'm just kidding. No, I really do think that like they feel pretty confidently, in the players that they have. I think, honestly, it comes down to whether or not they feel comfortable about Khalid or Milo Eifler at that fourth spot. Right. And I think that, Khalik's upside plus his special teams ability is really what's going to like set him apart. But I think, and again, like Logan Paulson put it a really good way in our three keys, is that with them switching to like almost like a 4-2 sort of situation, linebackers don't become as important because you have like that defensive back type out there to be, that Buffalo guy is going to be that third sort of linebacker-esque sort of role. And I mean, I think that they're comfortable with 4. I think if it is 5, the guy's not going to be in the roster. Right now, he's not going to be in the roster. I think you're going to bring in somebody like after like a public roster cut. But I think they feel pretty good about the 4 core players that they have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then Selby, to wrap up this interview, tomorrow, obviously, the game is big against the Ravens. Lamar Jackson will not be playing in it, so that means Tyler Huntley most likely will be starting this game. And this is the type of quarterback that they're going to be facing in week 1. A guy that can scramble but also accurate with the football. So it's a big measuring stick for this defense yet again. But my question to you, the third down defense with these type of quarterbacks, are you concerned about it? Yeah. Like, do you think this is just preseason, or is this something that's going to leak into the regular season?
Well, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't concerning, because it absolutely is. I mean, if there's one common trend that's shown up for the past year, it's that these running quarterbacks tend to find ways to get out of the pocket. That disruption is what causes all the problems. And I think it just comes down to what Rivera said. It comes down to rush discipline. It's a one-on-one thing, but it's basically true. You have to have guys who stick to their assignment and clog up these lanes. I always think about that Josh Allen game, against Buffalo Bills last year, where it seemed like there was one spot where Deron Payne just didn't hit, and then all of a sudden Josh Allen was able to sneak through there and get a first down. That's the way it always is. And I think, if they can do that, because they have 4 first-round picks, they all have a lot of talent out there. And if they can just do what they need to do, they need to just hit their rushing lanes, not let any other basically constrict them into the pocket. They're going to have a lot more success. And you saw Pat Mahomes take advantage of that. Not necessarily, with his rushing down the field, but he had more time to do his Mahomesian-esque like magician play, like that insane sidearm pass. Now granted, like not every quarterback is going to make those plays. I think probably only Patrick Mahomes is going to make those plays. But at the same time, like if you can kind of keep him inside the pocket and let him let those bigger guys like John Allen, Deron Payne, and Federian, whenever he gets healthy, crash the inside, it's just going to create problems for him. So I think if we can just rely on the rush lanes, keep them in the pocket, I think they'll be fine.
Historically, we've also let Daniel Jones do that to us repeatedly. So,
Yeah. Ben McAdoo.
Daniel Jones is sneaky against us.
He's super athletic. I know. Very, very athletic. It just sucks because he has a dumb face.
Yeah. He's sneaky.
He does have a dumb face. Selby, now this next question, we've only seen a little bit of the first-round rookie Jahan Dotson so far in preseason. What do you expect out of him come regular season? Do you think it's going to be continued to be where he's dinked and dunked sort of here and there, or do you think his usage is going to escalate once week 1 comes around?
Well, I think, we've seen a little bit of that dinking and dunking, as you said, in the first 2 weeks, but I would not put too much stock into that.
Okay.
Because you have to remember, we're looking at like, if we're looking at how the offenses look in terms of like degrees, you probably say that, the way this offense schemed is like a bachelor's degree. We're probably going to see more of a doctorate and a PhD coming up, a master's and a PhD coming up pretty soon. We're going to see the playbook open once they get the meaty people out of there, as they can see practice. We'll get to see a little bit more of how we can see Jahan Dotson's playmaking ability down the field work more. Because I think that's absolutely on purpose that they haven't really used him that much downfield. Like, you can only think of one time, and it ended up being a holding call on the defense that pretty much. Some will argue they prevented a touchdown. I'm not willing to go there, but it was definitely going to be like at least a 40-yard gain. So I think we're going to see more of that. I wouldn't say that, we're going to see him, just go out there and make like 1,500-yard plays, off the jump. But I think we're going to see a couple of shots every now and again from Wentz because that's what he does.
Absolutely. Now, my last question for you that I have, Washington picked up the guard Wes Martin from the Jacksonville Jaguars that obviously was here in years past from 2018. We know Wes Martin very well. This is my favorite pickup of the offseason, of the entire offseason for multiple levels. How did you like the move?
Well, I'll tell you, back in 2020, I made the statement that Wes Martin always makes me smile. No matter what, if he's on the field, he just makes me happy because he seems like he's a very good guy. He has that beard, and he's just he's a happy-go-lucky guy. But he's always stout when he needs to be. And the first time when I saw Wes Martin stretching by Roulier, just cracked a smile because I was just happy to see it. I think you bring up that he's your favorite pickup. I wouldn't say that, but I think that he's got a lot of like depth ability. I think he's going to come in there. If you need like a guy who's going to start for one game, I think you can find that in Wes Martin. It's interesting that they're putting him at center. He had a couple of high snaps during like that Thursday warm up. I think he's a little more suited for a guard, but he has that position flexibility if he needed to. But yeah, I'm interested to see where that goes because it's very rare to pick up a guy so close to roster cuts. So we'll see if he ends up making it and sneaks on the practice squad. But I'm excited.
Yeah, I just want to be
let us know Jacksonville's offense too.
Well, I want to be transparent about this. The one thing that pisses me off every season is we release a guy and the team that we're playing,
the Eagles
week one,
pick up Nate
picks him up,
yeah.
and then they kind of know what's going on a little bit. And I'm glad that Washington is on the receiving end. That's why I like it a lot, Selby. I know that's a crazy conspiracy theory, but I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother. I really do appreciate you taking time out. I can't wait for your new show to come out with Snacking with Selby with the Washington Commanders. Make sure you guys go and check that out. Selby, can't thank you enough, brother. Have a good night.
You too. I appreciate y'all. Have a good weekend, and hopefully we'll end up celebrating the end of a streak. The end of a streak.
Yeah, most impressive streak in sports history.
The most irrelevant streak ever. I don't know why they never get to play. Have a good weekend, Selby.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Zach Selby. I always like talking to Selby.
So
he didn't answer my Fidarian Mathis question.
Every time I talk to him, I get hungry because I just think about all the desserts that he bakes.
I'm still mad we haven't tried one of his desserts yet or anything.
I know. I hear he makes a mean peach cobbler. I'm very excited for that.
So, guys, we got the game against the Ravens, the Battle of the Beltway, coming up tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. It's going to be a great game. I know, obviously, we don't think the starters are going to be playing a lot. Lamar Jackson won't be in this game. But there's a lot of battles for Washington going on here. So what's one position battle that you're looking forward to seeing against the Ravens tomorrow? Because that is a good team throughout. Obviously, they win these preseasons because they care about these games and they have quality depth on their team. So this is going to be a really good competition measuring stick. What's a competition position battle you're looking forward to, Reed?
I'm excited to see the offensive line, like we just talked about with Wes Martin. I mean, Washington has had some terrible luck over the last few years when it's come to injuries and on especially along the offensive line. I mean, you think back to last year, they were down to their fourth string center at one point. So I'm very excited to see this depth and these guys. I mean, bringing in Wes Martin, who's a versatile piece, and then we got some of these young guys. I mean, Chris Paul. I'm excited to see what they can do, and if they can go in there and establish themselves as guys who you can trust to come in if anything goes down and they have to get some playing time. And I know that's weird to be excited for offensive line play, but hey, I'm a fat guy at heart, okay, and also, in my body too is also fat. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, for me, I would say the D line, like guys like Daniel Wise, F.A. Obata, Shaka Toney, William Bradley King, seeing how they go against Tyler Huntley and how they're able to contain him, because it's obviously been an emphasis for this coaching staff over this period because their third down woes continue to show. And so for me, it's that D line going up against that quarterback. Can they contain him and can they keep him in the pocket? What do you think, Cole?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the wide receivers against the Ravens defensive backs. Obviously, the Baltimore Ravens have a rich history of like great defensive backs, great defensive back depth, and that 6 wide receiver spot looks like it's up for grabs. I want to see if Dax Milne is going to come out there and take charge of that six spot. Is it going to be Erickson that takes over that 6 spot because of the special teams ability as well? So I definitely think that that wide receiver 6 spot is going to be a good battle to watch on tomorrow.
And another one that I'm thinking of is the linebackers, the depth here going against the tight ends. This is a tight end.
Isaiah Likely's been killing it.
Dependent kind of offense. I'm really excited to see how the safeties, linebackers kind of combat that issue and seeing how they go up against the Ravens, because that is a quality passing attack to their tight ends. And the tight ends have been something that's been a thorn in Washington's backside ever since I can remember. You know, Hall, we like to say we grew up disappointed on Sundays, right? You know, it's just one of those things. Exactly. Now, let's go to our fan questions, and this one's going to be from the Colonel. Hall, I want to start this with you. Is any chance Sammis Reyes gets picked up by another team?
Ooh, well, he's injured. He reached a settlement. I don't think he does. Honestly, I wish he would. I hope that he has another chance to make a roster somewhere, or like, at least get some more work as far as like growing his game. But I just think that the talent is just so raw and and maybe that will be the reason why. You know what? I'm gonna flip it. I think the talent, the untapped talent, is just like so raw, and I think that coaches always have egos. I always think that if I get my hands on that guy, I can bring something out of that guy just because he's like such an athletic freak and just look at the guy when he walks around the field. He's just like chiseled up.
You see looks his like modeling pictures, man.
Exactly. Dude, he looks the part. So I do think that eventually at some point he might get picked up, maybe get a tryout somewhere. Hopefully he sticks somewhere, maybe a practice squad guy, something like that. So I do think it'll be somewhere. As unfortunately, I don't think it'll be here.
I don't think this year, certainly, I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, they reached an injury settlement. So, obviously, that injury is going to keep Sammis off the field for quite some time. But I will say I want, if he doesn't re-sign with a team in the offseason, I would like to see the Commanders just re-sign him. Just to see how he does in training camp, to see how he does in preseason. Maybe he won't make the roster with the way that the tight ends have been producing here, but just to see how he's progressed in year 3. We have to remember this guy is fresh into football. He's an athletic freak, and obviously it's harder for him to go against people that are based on this game and know this game for many, many years. It comes second nature to them. He's having to develop that second nature in the professional level, and that's very hard for someone to be able to do. So I would like to see Sammis Reyes have an invitation back to the Commanders next season just to see how he looks and to see how he's progressed, because I'm sure he's going to continue leaning on Logan Paulson in order to kind of develop his case as a tight end. I would like to see him back here next year. This year, I don't know about his injury. Like, I don't know if he's going to be okay in a month. I don't know if he's going to be okay in 3 months. So I'm not sure about this year, but next year I would like to see him back.
Yeah, it's stressful too because we got a lot of good young tight ends. So like all the upside that he has, it is crazy. But unfortunately, he started football too late at this point. But I would love, like you said, I'd love to see him get another chance down the line. I could see him possibly getting picked up, but again, it depends on his injuries. But like you said, Kyle, this is what I want to see more of. I want to see this guy. Like, look at that. He's got 8-ball pants on. He's got 8 balls on his pants. That is so cool. I just want to see more of that. I'll be good. Now my camera's all out of focus.
Yeah, and your camera's still adjusting. Like, man, did you see that guy? Now look at this ugly mug.
I know. It's like, now look at this dude. Look at this cracker.
Like, no, he's too ugly. Let me blur that out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's too much.
What do I do? Do I make a wish?
Yeah, that's a great question, Colonel. Now, this next question is from the Colonel. Do you guys see us picking up a linebacker or 2 off waivers now that rosters are being trimmed? Hall.
I thought that they would, depending on who the person was, or maybe just like a veteran guy that kind of adds a little bit more depth, a little more veteran presence into the room. But just like Selby, we were just talking about with him, just like Logan Paulson has said on here a couple of times, the linebacker is not really like being phased out of the NFL as far as the defense goes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, your screen just cut out.
Yeah, but so they're not really being phased out, but they're not on the field as much because you just have so many sub packages, the offenses are kind of spreading people out nowadays. A lot of 3 wide receiver sets on the field. So I would like to see them pick up a guy just for a little bit of a veteran presence, a little bit more veteran presence in the room. But like I said, they have confidence in their linebacker room, and it looks like they're going to be rolling with what they got.
Yeah, I don't think that maybe they will. Maybe somebody like Landon Collins they'll pluck up last minute just as a depth piece. He's still there. He hasn't gotten a lot of traction around the league. And some would say, well, maybe that's for a good reason, right? Why you wouldn't. But that being said, there's the depth question is still there. Like Nate Jerry, the guy they just signed is now on IR. So what are we going to do here? There has to be depth there. I would like to see it added. I'm just not sure exactly who they would go about in getting. Maybe a guy like Joe Schobert, something like that. There's a couple players that are available. Like I think Alexander Johnson is somebody that Nathan Coleman likes a lot and has been. I think he's still available if I'm not mistaken. So there's always quality talent out there. It's just are they requesting to be a starter? Because what you're doing is you're signing for depth. And what if the player's like, I want to hold out to be a starter for a needy team? And that could kind of muddle the waters a little bit. But I wouldn't expect them to go with linebacker. It's obvious that they're putting more stock into the safety position than they are at linebacker. And I think that was evident by their draft, to be perfectly honest. Now we are joined by our next guest, Mr. Adam Aniba. How are you doing, brother?
He's back.
It's been a while. How's it going, guys?
Yeah.
Yes, it has. Doing well, brother. I'm glad to speak with you. The Colonel had a question for us. Wanted to get your opinion on it. Do you see us picking up a linebacker or 2 off waivers now that rosters are being trimmed?
I definitely do. Tonight was my goal to just dig in and see like some potential names. But as far as like who's available now, there's really nobody to speak of. But yeah, if I were them, they should definitely be looking at waiver wire because they got to make some upgrades. Even if it's just for depth, what they're going into the season right now, I'd say being a concern's an understatement.
Absolutely. Now let's go to our next question, Adam. I want to get your opinion on this first. Would you be willing to trade Dyami? This is from Tim Towner on Twitter. Would you be willing to trade Dyami Brown at final cutdowns for a linebacker 3 that can play off the ball but also has some pass coverage skills?
Yikes. I like our receiving core, so I definitely would think about it. So it would have to depend who the linebacker is. I think easy answer because like just anyone that they might not be here next year. Brown, I think, has upside. There's some issues to his game for sure. There's some laziness that I don't like that really like reared its head in the preseason. But yeah, I don't think I'd move on unless we're talking about like a legit name here.
Yeah, the run blocking issues, I'm sure, is what you're referring to. And I would like to see Dyami Brown get some more work with Sam Howell in this preseason. Hopefully that happens tomorrow because Dyami has not really shown out so far in this preseason. And he obviously needs it. But I wouldn't do that, Tim. I want to keep Dyami Brown the 3rd-round pick. I think that his skill set perfectly matches what Carson Wentz brings. And the reason why we didn't see him be productive last year is because we didn't have the quarterback that could execute that skill set with Dyami Brown. And now that is here. And I think I've said for a while, I think Dyami Brown is that one ace in the pocket that you have when you're randomly at a 3rd and 5 and or like a 2nd and 5. You need that play action, just deep ball pump down. Dyami Brown's the guy you're going to call on because defenses aren't really expecting Dyami Brown to do anything when he comes in the game. Like, oh, Terry went out, Dyami's in. Okay, they're going to run the ball. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I definitely think that he's a commodity for this football team, his speed, and he is a great wide receiver. I think that maybe he just needs to see a little, like a taste of success for his motivation to start kicking again a little bit. That being said, that shouldn't be the case as a professional here, but we don't know him personally. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you can never have too many weapons. And if you can get him into like an Aldrick Robinson type role, where remember Aldrick Robinson that year where he was just catching these deep balls. If you could get Dyami Brown getting in something like that, of course, that's a big task. I know, I understand that, but the guy's got the potential. He's got unlimited potential. I mean, you just see his body type. I mean, being over 6 foot and as fast as he is, being able to get downfield. I think Dyami Brown, I still think he has a lot of potential. And yes, while we do need a linebacker, obviously you would think, like we talked about, I kind of think that this whole 2 linebacker thing and then kind of having the extra DB, it's kind of the way that the NFL is going. It kind of makes sense in today's passing league as well. So I think they're fairly comfortable with the linebacker situation right now.
What do you think, Hall?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Me personally, I wouldn't do it. Just also, you got to remember that he was a 3rd-round pick last year, so they're going to give him every single opportunity to succeed to make that pick seem like it was a great, like, thoughtful pick and not like a bust of a pick. So they're going to give him ample opportunity to get out on the field. Obviously, going back to last year, he's been underwhelming as a wide receiver. We expect a little bit more out of him last year, and then for him to take that kind of 2nd-year jump as a a sophomore wide receiver. But all that being said, like you said, with the skill set that he has, you can't teach speed in this league, and speed kills in this league, and it's definitely a passing league. So if he can maybe get like a downfield catch or two, maybe like you said, just kind of build his confidence up a little bit, maybe he gets on the field. But at the end of the day, I would rather see Cam Sims on the field as that wide receiver 4 as of right now, because the blocking aspect of it, he's a taller guy that Carson Wentz
offers
taller
something
guys.
you don't have. Yeah,
exactly. But again, I think the deciding factor between De'Ami Brown and Cam Sims right now is that he was a 3rd-round pick and he has the speed to kind of take the top off the defense, which Cam Sims doesn't have. So they're going to give him every opportunity to succeed, and hopefully he comes out and does.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to say, but I think that him being held out of practice with that concussion all but solidified his 4th spot on the roster, to your point, Hall, on him being over De'Ami Brown. I think that's been evident at this point. Adam, you just came out with an article today talking about how important of a year it is for Montez Sweat. So before we get into our other fan questions, I kind of wanted to pick your brain about your article, and for anybody that can follow in, they can go read it as well and follow along. But kind of talk to us about that article of Montez Sweat, because I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Last year, listen, I know players get hurt, but the thing is, last year was the freakiest scenario for me. And that's why, I decided to put it out because, first he dealt with the broken jaw, the freak injury versus it was Denver. And then he comes back and he gets COVID. So he's down to 10 games for the season. But I just think that between last year and this year, everything I'm hearing, because I like to project, but I also listen to the coaches and the players because I think they're not really blowing smoke up our ass. And everything that they're saying about him, his pass rushing moves, his swims, everything that he's, his counter moves have just really improved. And, Leno came out basically saying, this guy is not the same as he was last year. And I think he's going to show the urgency. Number one, contract time is coming up. He is going to get that 5th-year option. But, with Chase Young, I think there's a lot more urgency for him to step up. I think that they will be creative in a lot of things they do. It's going to be Sweat, and then probably a mix of 3 or 4 D tackles, and even scenarios we could see Jamin Davis rushing the passer. So I think that basically all the pressure is on him right now to perform. And between him and Young, even though Young definitely had the more prolific college career and Ohio State, compared to Sweat, Mississippi State, but a lot of people forget if there wasn't that false report with the heart condition, we'd be talking about him as the top 10 pick as well. That's where I project him. He's my favorite pass rusher, favorite prospect that draft. So when that happened with Washington, that was a dream scenario. So personally, me, I'm a little biased because I watched every single one of his games going back to high school, like his last year in high school. So I think he's going to be the best pass rusher on this team. So I think floor for him, I think we're still seeing, 8-9 sacks, ceiling. I think he's a 15 sack kind of guy. But what I love about him is those 8 passes defended in, less than 3 full seasons. So that's something you just don't see from a lot of defensive ends. But, ones that are running and have 4.4, low 4.4 range, it's not just those measurables. It's just what I think he can do. And they're talking about, he's a trash talking now. He was quiet the first year. Nobody was saying anything about him. I just think he's taken his game to a whole new level. I'm just expecting big things.
Yeah, when I was at training camp watching him chase Carson Wentz out of bounds, who are both 6'6", huge, massive men, it was insane to hear and feel the ground rumble as they ran towards us.
Sure.
But we asked the question earlier because obviously the last preseason game against the Ravens is tomorrow night at 7. I asked the guys what they were looking for in position battles against the Ravens in particular and what you were looking for. Is there any position battles or groups that you're looking at for tomorrow?
I think for the most part, the safeties are pretty set. But, I'm looking at Derrick, Forrest, and Reeves because I think those are the 2 guys that are competing potentially for the last DB spot, unless they decide to keep an extra one because it is right now I have 5, and so Forrest would be the 5th. But I do think that it's going to be interesting to see the defensive ends, like I mentioned. How many are they going to keep with, because Young, it's not going to cost a roster spot for him. He's earliest he's back is week 5. We know Shaka Tony, James Smith-Williams, and I just think we've heard a lot of stuff from Ron Rivera about certain guys, Casey Toohill, but I really wonder, is there going to be a dark horse that comes out of that? Because I think if somebody has a really good, night against the Ravens, which I think it's just a roster bubble game, but I think the coaches are specifically looking at pass rushers, safeties. I think, everywhere else is pretty set. I think they know what they're getting offensive line, wide receiver, running backs. But it will be curious to see, how deep that they go in that game because I don't think we're going to see the starters long. So personally, I'm looking at the pass rushers and the safeties because I think the defense has been the bigger concern during the preseason. So I'm just looking to see some guys on the depth, even if they don't make the team, because we have that practice squad. I think there's definitely a chance for a lot of these guys to come back. So no matter what happens, so I'm looking for depth guys, how they're going to perform.
Adam must have been in the Zoom call the whole time because he took the two that I picked. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Adam, wholeheartedly about that. But look, a lot can happen in this game tomorrow night against the Ravens. Hopefully the starters are not playing all that much, and hopefully Rivera is being honest when he says very, very little that they're going to be playing, very, very brief. But I want to get all of your all's opinions. We're heading into week 1 of the season. What is your number one biggest concern? Reed, I'll start with you.
I think that the secondary, I mean, we heard all offseason about how the secondary is communicating better than ever. They're playing fantastic. They were the MVPs as a position group so far of training camp. And then the preseason game started. And it was more the same that we saw last year, where it seemed like a lack of communication. And look, I understand that these guys, it takes a little while for you to kind of get going, and they're not playing together for a full 3 quarters or 4 quarters, and then so they're only doing it in limited action. But they have the Kendall Fuller gave up a touchdown in first week, and then you saw Cam Curl give up one last week, and it's just kind of uncharacteristic of those guys to give them up in that capacity. I mean, I know Cam Curl had good coverage, it is what it is, but I'm really kind of worried about this secondary getting back on track, and because as soon as a corner gets down on themselves, then it's like game over. The quarterback's going to have a field day with them. So I think it's good that we've got veterans like William Jackson and Kendall Fuller, but they're really going to need to put it together early on, because you don't want to get into a hole early.
Yeah, one thing that you've seen time and time again is William Jackson playing up on the playing press on the wide receiver. You look on the other side of the field, Kendall Fuller is 8 yards off. So they're kind of using this kind of hybrid scheme here, and I'm really liking it. Obviously, it hasn't paid dividends yet, but like Selby said, we're seeing the bachelor's degree of the offensive defense. We're going to be getting the doctorate and the master's here come week 1. What do you think, Adam? What is your number one concern heading into the season?
I'm on the same page, because I'm not as concerned with Holcomb and Davis. I think they'll do good enough. I don't think that they're going to be a reason this team loses. The DBs will. That's my big concern. A guy that I really did a deep dive in was Percy Butler. And I think this team is good if he ends up being the starter midseason, because I'm not sold on McCain. I think you take away those last couple games last year, he was inconsistent at best. So the safety position is concerned. I'm with the cornerbacks, that free safety position, because I think this team is at its best if Cam Curl can just sit at his strong safety position. Buffalo nickel or not, I think, like we talked about Forrest, I think he could be a candidate we see, in that big dime. There's different scenarios, because, Khaleke, you talk about size-wise, Khaleke Hudson and Forrest and these other guys, there's not much size difference. We're talking about linebackers and safeties these days. So I think you're going to see 70+% of the time, where they're going to have that extra safety. So I'm really concerned about that. St. Juste at slot. Everyone said, seems to be, not mentioning it much. That's my biggest concern in the defensive backfield, because I'm not sold on him. I understand it was only 1 year, but back-to-back concussions, we've seen that movie in Washington before. So I'm concerned with, his overall backpedal, his recovery, because again, it's great to have a guy with size that can cover the slot, but there's not too many of them out there that can really get low and defend, some of the better slot receivers in the NFL. So that's probably my biggest concern is, will they keep him there at the slot? McCain, he's that hybrid, safety, slot corner. So I think we could see him share time with St. Juste too. But yeah, the cornerbacks, the defensive backfield, that's a big concern for me, because those are the areas where we can give up a lot of points.
Yeah. As soon as you brought up the concussions by back, I automatically, I was like, God damn it, you're right. Sua Cravens. It was exactly like Sua.
Well, and
Don't do that to us, Benjamin.
To your point about Benjamin St. Juste, he gave up that one long corner route last week when he was playing in the slot. And then we saw the media saying that the corner and Buffalo nickel role was being played by multiple people this week, that they were rotating him out. So I'm sure the coaching staff saw that play and said, look, we need something better than that. To your point, guys. But, Hall, do you agree with Reed and Aniba that the secondary is your biggest concern going into the season?
No, I mean, that's definitely on the list, but I'm going to go something that goes well with the secondary to kind of blend together, and that is the defensive line and the pass rush. I definitely have that concern because I think
first. I knew it.
Yeah, of course. You know how this goes, man.
Should have went first.
I think that I think the pass rush, if they're not going to be like, obviously going back to last year, the whole thing was they're not being disciplined. They're getting out of their rush lanes. And here it is again, coming in again this year. And Rivera's still mentioning how guys are getting out of their rush lanes. They're being undisciplined. They're trying to do too much on any given play when they should just stick to the scheme and stick to what their role is for that, for whatever any given play that it is. So, yeah, you guys talk about the secondary, and I would agree, but I definitely think that if you have a great pass rush, that makes things on the back end a lot easier for the secondary. So I want to see this team is going to go with as far as the pass rush takes them, honestly. They can get a good rush up front.
You're
They
absolutely
can make the quarterback uncomfortable, and then we can start to play with a lead. That only makes the defensive line's job a lot easier. They can pin their ears back and kind of just play a lot freer and go after the quarterback because the opposing team is going to have to play catch up pretty much. So I want to see the defensive line get after it, play up to their potential, make things uneasy for the opposing quarterbacks so that they can obviously hopefully cause some turnovers on the back end, cause some 3-and-outs, cause disruption, and get good field position for the offense to put some points on the board. And yeah, so I'll definitely go with the defensive line.
Yeah, ultimately, I do agree with you. It is the D-line, the one aspect, because this defense is at its best. Ultimately, it is at its perfect form when there's constant pressure and containment from those defensive ends and the defensive line. If the defensive line is able to penetrate up into the quarterback's lap, the D-ends are wrapping around so the quarterback can't abandon the pocket, forcing the quarterback to throw into that cover 3 quarters. That's when this defense is at its best. So to your point, I am concerned about that because they have not progressed at all in these couple preseason games, but I'm not panicking. That being said, to not jump on with you, I will say the offensive line, even though that Matsko has these guys playing great, the red zone conversion rate is something that I will continue to harp on, and running the football effectively, consistently, is what's going to transition into points. And my concern about the defense is why I'm concerned about the offensive line run the ball fundamentally well, because if they're able to put up points consistently, then it's helping out the defense. And that's ultimately what I am concerned about. But let's go to our next fan question. I'm going to go to you with this, Adam. This is from Matt Larson. What's up, Matt? Last season, we only seemed to play well for one half of the games, sometimes first half and not so often the second half. Do you attribute that to game planning / coaching or to the performance of players? And does Wentz improve this?
A little bit of good question. A little bit of both, to be honest with you. Like we heard a little bit more about the discipline earlier, but I think with both coaches, Del Rio and Scott Turner, I think that there's I think they lack right now the ability to adjust. I keep seeing teams really just constantly outthink them, and that's what I'm looking for. But to what you said about Wentz, definitely, if you can have a quarterback and get the ball downfield, he's labeled like sometimes he's a little reckless. I think his stop in Indianapolis, because I went back and watched all of those games, I liked what I saw. I saw definitely some boneheaded mistakes, but I think when you gave him a run game and he had the ability to get it downfield, he just didn't have the weapons on. That's one of the worst situations a receiver that he's had. I think in Washington, that's one thing that he has a luxury with. So I think if they do get behind, one thing about this team, I think we can definitely come from behind with the type of speed that they have in the quarterback. But discipline is going to be huge this year. But I think in saying that, we talk about Montez Sweat. Del Rio has to start using his guys to their strength. I need to see more stunts. I need to see more pre-snap movement. I need to see, more creative pass rushes, going back to what the Packers did with Clay Matthews, the NASCAR. I want to see that. I want to see guys standing up, being unpredictable, at the snap.
Thank you.
But right now we're still seeing the same old. So I think we're going to have to rely on maybe more pressure, But I don't think right now Del Rio, I don't have a lot of faith in him. So I'm really pulling for the players like Montez Sweat to have a huge year and, possibly open up for the other guys. But yeah, coaching to me, that's the biggest thing I'm concerned with right now. But Turner, I think with the run game, I think people concerned with Gibson, this is the best thing that could have happened to him. Yep. I think we're going to see him in space. And, Robinson is a guy I've watched Alabama. He waited his turn behind some great guys and just learned. Like, there's no diva in this guy. He's perfect for that ground and pound that they're looking for right now. So I think offensively, like you mentioned, the offensive line, if they can stay healthy, that's a big if. But I think if they can open up some holes, we can ground and pound, teams late in games. So
absolutely, sir. I agree with you there. I do attribute it to game planning, Matt, because essentially what they do is early in games like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, they're the type that they'll come up with plays to attack your defense. And so what we'll do is we'll say, okay, we'll sit back in our defense. We'll let you get those early, but you're going to have to call a different play at some point. And when we see that formation come up again, we know what you're calling. And so essentially it's like suffocating them, because what you see against these offensive teams is they come out and they have these hard-hitting great plays like the Chargers. But what our defense says is, okay, that's fine, you had that early on, but now stretch it out through 4 quarters. And they adjust through that. And that's why typically this is a second half team. How many times did we say, guys, on this podcast going into game weeks where if they're down by 10 at half, that's striking distance for them. That's a winnable game. But when it gets to 17-24, that's when it's out of the reach for them. And so that's why that kind of plays into their hand a little bit with this defense. And so I do attribute it to game planning, but I loved the way that Dean Pease calls defense for Atlanta. Watching him stack 8 guys on the line of scrimmage, standing up, causing chaos for the quarterback because he doesn't know who's coming over the offensive line, and it makes him hesitate. It makes him think just a little bit. And with the way that Jack Del Rio is calling defenses, they know the offense already knows what you're in, and so it doesn't cause chaos at all. It's almost like cookie cutter in a way, if that makes any sense. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of hit the nail on the head with that. But I'll just add that coaching can only go so far. I think, like, obviously players have to go there. Players are the ones that have to play. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can have the best coach in the world. It doesn't really matter because they're not on the field. At the same time, players can't do anything if they're not put in position to succeed. I mean, if they're not there. So it's kind of a mixture of things, but I think the game planning is kind of been the biggest Achilles heel for us as of late.
Yeah. Anything to add, Hall?
Yeah, I mean, you've known how many times for years, probably since you've known me, Kyle, how many times have I said we play one good half, one bad half, whether it be the first half or the second half, there's always going to be a half where you're just scratching your head like, what did I just watch? And then for some reason they come out in the second half or whatever half it may be, and it's just like, why couldn't you start that way? Why do you take so long to get it going? So that's a great question by Matt, and I definitely feel where he's coming from. I definitely do think it comes into like game planning a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's been multiple coaches that have been here, and it's always kind of been the same kind of thing where it's one good half, one bad half. And I just kind of contributed it to players. Honestly, you got to have players. You got to have players are what win the games. Obviously, you can have like role guys and rotational guys, but you got to have those studs out there. Like I heard a quote the other day on the radio where someone said, you can't win the Kentucky Derby with a donkey. Like, you know what I'm saying? You need the studs out there on the racetrack. So you got to have the guys out there. Obviously, coaching goes into it. Coach is supposed to put you in the best position to make that play. But at the end of the day, you got to have the studs. You got to have the players out there actually making the plays. So all around, I think it's just all around game planning, players, and just the level of type of player that we have in Washington compared to around the rest of the league. And I think Scott Turner coming down to the field this year, being on the sidelines, calling plays, I think that's going to help a lot as far as like that good half, bad half type of thing, because he's going to be able to talk face-to-face with Carson. He's going to be able to talk face-to-face with guys like Terry, the other wide receivers, the offensive line, the tight end group, to kind of see, okay, what are you guys seeing? How should I make adjustments? What should I do to help you guys out a little bit better? So hopefully they get it switched around this year.
Yeah, and essentially with that Scott Turner calling the plays from the field, what it eliminates is like, have you ever tried to make a grocery order like with a third party where like you're telling a third party to distribute that information to the person picking it, and there's always just something wrong, like something's misheard, not correlated, and that's the difference between Scott Turner being in the booth, where that's not going through a third party anymore. Scott can talk to Carson directly and get better results that way. That's a great job, Hall. Now I want to keep it with you, Hall, because this next question is from Jeff Miles to wrap up this episode. Only a little bit more, Adam. This is from Jeff, and he says this is Pop's birthday today. Happy birthday, Pops, Mr. Miles.
Happy birthday, Pops.
His question is, what's more likely? We start 2-0, but the season is considered a fail, or we start 0-2 but salvage a playoff berth?
Well, based on the history of this team and how things go, and just based off the history of Rivera coach teams, they always start off slow in the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Towards the middle, towards the end of the year, that's when they pick up steam and kind of, which in theory you want to be playing your best ball towards the end of the year. So I guess that's kind of okay, but I just want a team that wants to come out fast, start early. You got to like the teams that you're supposed to be better than on paper and on the field. You got to go out and beat those teams if you want to be a viable team in the NFL and in this league. You got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. Now, teams like the Chiefs, the Packers, like teams that are the upper echelon, if you can snag a game or two here from there, of course, you're going to love that. But again, the teams that you're supposed to beat, you got to go out and beat. But to answer your question, I could see them starting 0-2 and then somehow, some way, just going on that 4, 5, 6 game winning streak towards the end of the year, or winning 6 out of 8 to close it out to make that.
Sound went away. There it is.
There it is.
Always happens. For me, I think it's the 0-2, but with a playoff berth. Just because typically with this team, it's the opposite world. You know, where they beat Tampa Bay, they beat the Steelers, but then they lose these other games, and maybe that's the case with this season. But hopefully, that's not what happens. What do you think,
Almost
Adam?
made it through.
Well, I'm hoping my gut's not right, but it's just so Washington, like for Lawrence to come out and just to have his premier game against as a pro. And then, the scenario where they lose those first two and make the playoffs, of course, is ideal. But I think that even though they start out slow, I really hope that they just come out, uber aggressive, because I think that's the best way. And I'm talking about on both sides of the ball. I think that's the way that they gain some kind of identity. It's not just about taking each game by game. It's really coming out and establishing an identity. And that's what I'm hoping to see, just extra aggressive on both sides of the ball, especially a team like Jacksonville. This is not the old team. They've got mad talent. They've been drafted, top 2-3 picks the past, decade plus. So, they've got some talent, but I think that if Washington comes out, Lawrence, I like him a lot, but I still think, I said it when he was coming out that he's just going to need some time. So hopefully Washington's not going to be that game where he just breaks out.
Yeah, like Jacksonville is literally like the Nationals 10 years ago. After so many losing seasons, having all those number 1 overall picks, they were loaded at multiple spots. What do you think, Reed?
I mean, yeah, I think that, we're all kind of on the same page. And plus, just realistically, looking at it, I think Jacksonville and Detroit are better than people give them credits for. Like, I know that they had the number 1 and number 2 pick last year, but I think that they are a little bit better than that this season. So I wouldn't be surprised that, if we start off slow and then turn things around and kind of get on a winning streak. Now, will that winning streak be too early? And then all of a sudden, we get hit by the injury bug like we did last year. That's yet to be seen.
Can you imagine the headlines if we go 0-2?
Oh my God, I know.
It's going to be it's going to be a meltdown on Twitter and on the radio, just everywhere. It's going to be a meltdown.
Yeah, it is. But Reed, this next question, only 2 more, but let's keep this with rapid fire. Reed, this from Big Tony Shivers. Thank you, Tony. Which young safety makes a bigger impact this season, Derrick Forrest or Percy Butler? Great question.
I'm going to go with Percy Butler. I love both of their skill sets. They're both super athletic, but I think Percy Butler, just being able to put him back at free safety, you can play him close to the line. He's going to make an impact on special teams. I think Percy Butler is going to make a pretty big impact year 1.
What do you think, Adam?
I think there's a reason we haven't heard a ton, and it's not because he hasn't been impressive, because as soon as he was drafted, Rivera they were talking about special teams. He said, I'm not sure about that, because he's like a guy that's going to play, 52+% of the time. I'm not sure if I'm going to throw him to a special team. So to me, that sounds like a guy they're grooming to start. I think people are caught up in the other guys. I like those depth guys, but I think he definitely complements what Curl is. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Butler, everything I saw him do, he's at his best when he's deep field. He can utilize his speed and, take away angles. So definitely him.
For me, I think it's Derrick Forrest. Nikki Giabala of the Washington Post uploaded a video the other day of Derrick Forrest on special teams making a huge impact down the field, and that he's essentially replacing DeShazier Everett. And so in that breath, that's why I think that he'll have the bigger impact, because they've been looking for that special teams ace, right? And I think Derrick Forrest has that ability to be able to take that from them. With Percy Butler, I feel like it's going to be hard to take Bobby McCain off the field. And it's more likely that Derrick Forrest would be used in some sort of nickelback, Buffalo nickel role, more so than Percy Butler being rotated out with Bobby McCain, if that makes sense. I have a lot of respect, and I have a lot of I think Percy Butler's going to do a great job in this league. I just think that this year at the moment, just based on the way that things have shaped out, I think Derrick Forrest will just be a little bit more of an impact based on special teams, in my personal opinion. What do you think, Reed?
I already answered.
Oh, my bad. Hall.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I think it's going to be Derrick Forrest just for the facts you just said. Special teams, I think he's going to be one of our special team aces. I think he's going to take over. You said that DeShazier Everett, kind of that Troy Apke role where he's just flying down the field making plays.
I love Troy, but come on.
Hey, they named him the special. He was a special teams ace.
You're right.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
That was a good.
But no, I think he's going to be more impactful on special teams, and I think that, like you said, I think he's a better Buffalo nickel role right now than Percy Butler, just because he's more of a sure tackler right now. He's kind of like a bigger kind of hybrid guy. And so I definitely think that he can play in the box a little bit better than Percy Butler can as of right now. to get them on the field just a little bit faster.
And one of the other reasons why I picked Forrest over Butler is Rivera made a comment about how some of the rookies, it looked like the speed of the game caught him by surprise when they were in that first preseason game, and he named Percy Butler as one of those guys. That's the only, obviously that can easily come to somebody, but maybe they are a little trepidatious with him with the speed of the game, but maybe he caught it immediately. Last question, Adam.
Also, me and Adam are right, and you guys are on the other side.
You're probably right. Adam, last question is from Andy Lockhart in the UK. Oi! Do you think Deron Payne is traded before the deadline?
No. I think that if anything, that would be the only scenarios if they were losing, a bunch of games. But even that way, I don't see them doing it. And right now, we're still waiting to see what's going on with Mathis. But I don't think it's going to be major. But I think that, Payne is safe. I think that they pretty much rolled, not offering him a contract, discussing that. I think they pretty much said this is going to be just like with Brendan Treff. To me, it's the same situation, identical. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I agree with you. You essentially said everything that I would say. The only thing that I would add is that basically he's more productive for them playing in their lineup than he would be in what they would receive in return for him in a trade.
Right.
I think essentially is what your point is, getting that out of him into the season. Because if you're going to get a first-round pick out of it, it doesn't help you this season. And with Fedarian Mathis being hurt, you don't want to go into that now being a weakness, which was once your strength. You know what I mean? What do you think, Reed?
No.
Good answer. Hall?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think he's, like you said, he's more valuable here than he is for what you would get back for him in the longer term. And if he was going to get traded, he would have got traded pre-draft or during the draft, so they can kind of use that pick that they got in this year's draft to kind of not really replace him, but to get a piece back that they can actually use on the field this year, and instead of just losing Deron Payne and getting nothing back for him this year. So, yeah, long story short now.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. Please reach out in the comments. What's your biggest concern heading into the season this year? How do you think that we're going to do? We want to hear from you guys. Adam, I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother, on late notice. It's been a while. You were our first guest on this show. Kevin on Facebook told us, you got to get back on here. I was like, dude, we've been trying to get Adam on here, but our schedules haven't aligned.
I don't do as many shows anymore because between the website and the small school, because I start every year that goes by, I start off early. I've already started doing interviews for the next draft, and I just kind of sit on those and start to bring those out around fall time. But I'm simultaneously doing the Commanders and this, and then my little show, B&G Report Happy Hour. It's like 10-minute episodes. Just some of my thoughts on the last episode talks about Dax Milne as our next kick returner. But, check me out, the burgundyandgoldreport.com. But I just love coming on with you guys because, the discussion's always flowing.
My man, I can't thank you enough. Sir. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. If you made it this far, you're a champion, and I love you. All right, everybody. We'll see you back on Monday. Have a great, safe weekend.
We're breaking that streak.
If you're going to Baltimore for the Ravens game, please be careful. Do not walk 5 blocks north. Please do not do that. All right, everybody. We will see you again on Monday. Stay safe. Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!